For those of you that can't read lips, a little red button was glowing. I wasn't watching. Okay, anyhow, this is going to replace our normal meeting in Annandale because of the obvious problem with coronavirus. Everything's getting canceled. I mean, gun shows. In fact, I've got an alert to go out. I'll try to do that tonight and get that out. The gun show this weekend in Richmond has been canceled. And there was one that Pat Webb was going to do, and that one's been canceled. I think her schedule's kind of cleared out, as mine is pretty much, with the fear of coronavirus, I guess, going around. So we're going to be talking about a variety of things today, and as you post questions and comments, I've got basically Ed looking at that, and he's going to let me know those that he thinks would be good for me to reply to, and he and Pat Webb can be replying to those that they kind of think is more of a onesie or twosie type question. Well, we're waiting for our beloved governor to make up his mind on a whole slew of gun bills. And we're not really going to do I'm not going to do anything real detailed on the gun bills for one reason. The governor can still change these bills. So I can tell you what they do, and then in 2 days he could change the bill and send it back and it pass in this other format. What I told you would be wrong. So we are going to I guess it's important you understand that fact that it could change. We can talk about a little bit about status. Well, guess what? What do you think was the first gun bill that the governor signed? Any guesses? It was a pro-gun bill, interestingly enough, that was the one that says, and so this will become law, I think it's July 1, that says if you buy a gun, say $1,500 or below, or maybe it's just less than $1,500. I don't remember if that was a cutoff mark or if you had to get below that. But anyhow, there's no sales tax. So that's a good deal. If you need any gun safes, that's brought the price of that gun safe down 5.3%. So that was the very, very first gun bill that got signed this year, as it was the first one that worked its way through the General Assembly. And now we're just waiting on all the rest of these bills. There were two. In fact, most of these bills had pairs, and they basically, at the end of the day, they were all made identical, the pairs. So it's not like you got one that deals with a subject and another one that deals with the same subject that's different. And this is typical. This is how it's usually done. They've been combined to, so it's really just almost symbolic, because you only need one bill to make a law. You don't need two. But the House wants to get credit for it, and the Senate wants to get credit. So let's talk about just briefly about a few of these that are going on the governor's desk or are headed there. Not everything is on his desk yet. Some of the stuff has not been. When the bill passes both bodies, then at some point it's got to be signed by the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate. And the President of the Senate is our beloved Lieutenant Governor. So he has to sign it. Then it goes to the governor's desk, and the governor has, I believe it is, until April 11th to sign these bills. If he doesn't sign them, they become law without his signature. That's rarely done, but it could be done. And more than likely, he's going to sign these bills. But he could change them. So again, I caution you that things I'm mentioning here are not final. They're probably final, but it's not a guarantee. Stun weapons carried you can have in your car, just like you can a firearm on school property. That bill's on his desk. That's not a big deal to gun owners, except it does give you a less lethal or a non-lethal option in an emergency. The bump stock bill Well, again, that was narrowed down. All this stuff has been narrowed down. None of this stuff is what it started as. The bump stock bill originally was going to take out a bunch of other stuff. And again, this could change, but as it stands right now, it just affects truly bump stocks and not binary triggers or anything else like that. And that was SB 14. The preemption laws, those both are on the governor's desk. The preemption law is going to allow localities to control guns in certain locations. We will be getting cracking on a response to this about the time that the bill gets signed. Keep in mind, none of this starts till July. So whatever happens, we're going to have time for VCDL to do legal challenges for those that we're going to challenge initially, and time for us to gear up to deal with these bills if they are not able to be stopped by a legal challenge. And so there'll be a lot more on this whole concept of the preemption being destroyed. Reciprocity this session was not touched. That's a good thing. They had a bill to do it, but our reciprocity with other states, being able to carry in other states, that bill died. It never got a vote. It just, I think they want to look at it and walk away from it and said, no. They know what a furor that rose just by itself about 3 years ago when the Attorney General decided he wanted to say, oh, we don't honor 15 states or 20 states, 25 states, I think it was. And that was a disaster back then for the Democrats. And I think they decided they didn't really want to touch it right now. Okay, so red flag bill. Yeah, the red flag went through. It's got some upfront protections in it. And we will tear that apart in detail once we've got the final thing. I think I've talked about this briefly before. And all this is going to be written up. Once we have the final thing and the governor signed them, they're on their way to become law. I plan to put out an in-depth, detailed description of everything in here and how to deal with it and how we're going to deal with some of these things. So all this stuff is moving on. Universal background checks. That has been restricted currently as it passed. It's restricted to only bona fide sales. So if you give a gun to somebody, you loan a gun, hey, take my shotgun and go over in that field and hunt while I'm hunting in this field, that's all fine. It's only if it's a bona fide sale where something of any kind of value or worth is given in return for the gun. Then universal background checks kick in. We'll have some specific advice on that when the time comes. Lost or stolen firearms, 48 hours. That was up from 24 hours to report to 48. That's on its way up there. Protective orders taking away your gun rights while they're in effect. That's on its way to the governor. Before, you could, as of right now until July 1, you could have a gun in your home. You couldn't transport it or buy new ones if there was a protective order. So at least you could protect yourself. That was removed, so you can't have guns at all. You can give them to others, friends or whatever, as long as they don't live with you, that you can let other people hold on to your guns. It doesn't have to be the police. By the way, red flag is a similar concept where, in fact, with the red flag, you have the option. They'll ask you first to turn over your guns. They're not going to come to your house with a warrant and just begin searching it. They will present you with something that says, you turn over your guns now, and you can then turn them over without going through a search warrant. And for them to get a search warrant, they'd have to have probable cause to believe that you weren't giving them all your guns. So that's the red flag again. Demonstration of competence. Right now it looks like online training is gone. However, NRA instructors are still there to teach you your concealed handgun permit course. That's a critical thing. That would have been a really, really, really bad disaster generally if NRA certified instructors couldn't teach concealed handgun permits. As it stands now, no online courses starting, I believe it's January 1. So I think believe it carries on. I don't have it in front of me right now. I'm pretty sure it's January 1. If that's not true, Pat, let me know on the comment line here. I do believe that that's correct. You're muted.
It is January 1 for the CHP.
Okay, thank you. So January 1, so you have the rest of the year. And that's a real shame, again, for people that look at right now. You know, who wants to go attend a class necessarily like today if everything else is closed and you're supposed to not get together with a group of people? So now the state is saying, well, too bad. If something like this happens in the future, you're just going to have to go have a face-to-face gun course as opposed to allowing for online training. Which brings me to something interesting. Let me pause here. This was something that happened, believe it or not, in Norfolk. The Norfolk Circuit Court clerk is allowing people that are applying for their concealed handgun permit for the first time, instead of coming in their office and showing your ID and all that stuff, they're letting you do what we're doing here, which is like FaceTime, or what basically where you can contact them and hold up your ID to the camera so the clerk can see it and do your whole, what would normally be done face-to-face, doing it on a computer. So, and maybe that would be a solution to this kind of a situation in the future. If there was no online training, I don't know, maybe this wouldn't really be considered online because it's sort of a face-to-face, but it'd be difficult to do with more than a few people. One handgun a month. On the way to the governor, it does not apply to concealed handgun permit holders. So the law is in the same form it was in 2012 when we got it repealed. And probably the form it'll be in when we repeal it again. Hopefully come not too far in the future. The SB 64 is on its way to his desk. That one was one that says if you're getting together in a group and you intimidate somebody, you could be charged with a felony. That was modified, and in the form it's in, you have to have a brandishing situation where somebody has actually got a weapon in a position where they could be charged with brandishing because they're threatening somebody, holding it in their hand and waving it around or pointing it at somebody, something like that, and that the group got together with the intent and purpose of intimidating people, and that a prosecutor would have to show before he could get a conviction on there that you did do it with intent and it wasn't something that was not done intentionally, but accidentally somebody was freaked out when they shouldn't have been. The one that snuck through that I haven't put in an alert yet was the voluntary put your name on a do not buy list. So in other words, if I suddenly decided I never wanted to own a gun again, I could go down and voluntarily have my name put on a list. And if I try to buy a gun after that, I'm charged with a Class 1 misdemeanor. And it goes on the NICS system, which is where one big issue with this comes up. It goes on the NICS system. At that point, you'd be blocked from buying it by the NICS. You'd be considered the same as any other disqualified person. So the problem with that, there's several. The bill was modified. Originally, it was killed by subcommittee, but a quick one happened, and somewhere along the line, the full committee let it go when they normally would have not even voted on it. They went ahead and resurrected it. And they put in some more changes that put in protections, like you cannot be discriminated against if you're not on the list or if you are on the list. You can't have your job affected if you are on the list or not on the list. Those address some of the things that one of the things we were concerned about, but there's much more than that isn't addressed, and we're going to have to, deal with this. One of the things would be how do you know for sure that it'll take you off the NICS system once you're in it? Because if let's say somebody signed you up illegally and said, Joe Schmo wants to be on this list, and they put you on the list, they can put you on like this, but it takes 21 days to get off. So even if you say, hey, that wasn't me, that was my ex-wife or something that did that to get even with me, it's going to take 21 days before you're off the list to buy. Now, you're not a prohibited person from owning, but you're prohibited from buying. So you couldn't buy another gun until the minimum of 21 days is passed, I think it is. And then the question is that for sure that you'll come off the NICS system? What if somehow you're not taken off the NICS system? Then that would be a lifetime ban on purchase. So there's some real questions with this that we're going to be looking at. And that's one that, like I say, we thought was dead, and it snuck through. It's just a bizarre bill, but could have some very odd or unexpected or maybe intended consequences based upon why the patron put it in. And then they had the thing with licensed family day home centers. We'll talk about that in more detail once all these bills are signed. So again, kudos to Norfolk for allowing this. I think you might suggest similar things to your local circuit court clerk. If you know them, give them a call and say, hey, why don't you do this? This way you don't have a bunch of people coming down. You're talking to the person live. It's just remote. It's face-to-face, just like you and I are. You're able to see me and see everything I do, and I can present information as requested. Okay. By the way, I'm continuing to try to work on a lobby day recap. I now have backed up in time through all my emails, and I'm back to January 16th. I passed lobby day, and I'm going back a little bit because I'm looking. There's thousands of emails I haven't read yet, so I've been going through those, catching up to January 16th at this point. This goes back to way into December, so I've got a long way to go. 16,000 more emails to look through, but I've got to the point now where I'm about to cut that off so I can go ahead and do the lobby day write-up. And it's okay because things have rolled in since then. I'd like to include in the final thing. It'll probably be a little lengthy. I'll try, as I usually do, break it into very small bite-sized chunks so it's easy to read, and people could listen to it in a car while they're driving to work. But it's going to cover all the different aspects of lobby day leading up to it. There was a lot of stuff leading up to it. All the oh my God, the world's going to end because Antifa's got 50 buses coming. All that kind of stuff. And then, of course, what happened on lobby day and somewhat what happened afterwards. Hey, Pat. You're on mute, Pat. Now we've all done it. You're muted. Can't hear you. I got it.
What we were talking about was Tess brought up, I don't know if you see it on the screen at the bottom. She thought you needed photo ID to get on that list. For someone to put you on the list, they'd have to have your photo ID.
I don't really want to step away to grab the bill. Ed, you want to take a look at the bill and see if that's the case?
I will, sure thing.
All right, you get back. Pat, can we hear you now? No? I'm no good at reading lips. I don't know if it's your earplug or what, but nothing's coming through. No. So while you're dealing with that, I'll move on here. So I'm working on the recap. I had a body cam on the entire day, and so I've taken that and edited it way down. Although it's still like 45 minutes, but it would show you lobby day, kind of my view of lobby day, just for the heck of it. I thought it might be interesting. It'll show you some of the crowds to see some of the things that are going on behind the scenes. I thought, I'm letting the board look at it to see what they think, if they agree it's worthwhile putting out there. But I thought people might be interested. You don't have to watch if you don't want to. It's going to be a part of, I don't know how many articles and videos on lobby day. It's going to be a massive alert, but it should be a lot of fun. A lot of good information in there. A lot of now it's been 2 months. It's a little nostalgia in there too. So that I'm working on. It's going to take a while. Don't expect this tomorrow. This is going to it'll still be probably a couple weeks before I can begin to pull all that together. It's a massive. Normally when I flag things to go in an alert, I might flag 20, 30 things. I have almost 700 things flagged. Now, we're not going to do all 700, but I mean, that shows you that, again, everything exploded during that time. Okay, there is right now, believe it or not, a run on guns and ammo. Now, I don't know if people are thinking they're going to go around and shoot the flu or shoot the virus, but it has created a run on guns. And I think it's kind of like what happened with toilet tissue. It's not like you really need toilet tissue for this particular virus any more than you would anything else. But once people go somewhere and they see that there's a shortage of anything, canned beans, and you suddenly think, oh my God, I might want canned beans. So then you start buying canned beans, and everybody's buying canned beans. Then you got to run. And I think this has happened on toilet tissue. I think it's happened on ammunition and guns. Now, I can understand people that don't have a gun, and they're going, might be a good time with the national emergency going on, and who knows, police responses might be slow. We could lose power, and that's good. People should be able and be prepared to protect themselves. We all agree on that. That's part of our philosophy. It's part of our mission to make sure that that right is protected for everybody. So that's good. Do we need to rush out and buy 10,000 rounds of ammo? I would say no. Now, if you want 10,000 rounds, knock yourself out. All I'm saying is I don't see that this is something I would recommend you have to do. You do what you want, but no, I don't see. I think probably everybody out there has got plenty of everything to be able to protect themselves during this interval here. And I do, but it is truly a run. I went just for the heck of it. I went to look for 556 by 45 ammo, for an AR-15, and boy, there's very few things left. Almost all of it's all sold out. Certainly anything in the 27 cent a round, 28, 29 cent a round range is all toast. The cheapest stuff I've seen out there is 35 cents a round, and some of it's 50 cents and more. I just watched a video where somebody was complaining that cheaper than dirt is gouging everybody and indeed, I looked at their prices and they were eye-popping. I mean, it was like $600, in some cases $900 for 1,000 rounds of 545 and stuff. I've got mixed emotions. Dennis and O'Connor and I have gone over this stuff from time to time, and the conclusion is, you let the free market work. Yeah, that's a lot to spend for ammo, but one thing about it, at those prices, it will be available. Somebody that really needs it, they just bought their first AR-15 and had no ammo at the store. They get home, they've got no ammo. This is going to be a self-defense gun. What do? Well, they may have to pay a lot more money, but they can get the ammunition. There won't be zero of it out there. There is some. It's just very expensive. That's the free market. Is how I look at it. Like the bottled water, when sometimes when they have disasters, people will go down and bring a truckload of water, and they'll be charging $5 for a bottle of water, and people are going, oh, that's gouging. Well, if it's a private person doing it, and they're taking the time and the effort to rent a truck, buy the water, drive down there, go through all that they have to go through to be at this place, you want them to have an incentive to do all that. And again, there would be water available for you in that case. You just have to pay a lot of money, but at least you have it as opposed to not having it at any price. Yeah, it would affect the poor people, I agree, but they're no worse off than they would have been if these guys weren't making enough money to come down there and bring the water in the first place. So it's an interesting thing. You get into a lot of things about price gouging, and it kind of brings up people's emotions. I just tend to say it's self-moderating. You price yourself too high and you price yourself out of the market. But if you're charging a price and people are willing to pay it because they want the commodity, well, then that's just the way it works. I'm glad I stocked up a long time ago. So I hope you guys did too. It just makes it easier. There have been some people now are apparently discovering 18.2-287.4, and they're worried. Can localities now starting in July ban open carry and all that? And the answer to that is not generally, no, only in their buildings they can control stuff, and in parks, places like that they specifically enumerated, they could control carry. They could say no open carry, no concealed carry, no carry at all, whatever. But I think a lot of people have discovered 18.2-287.4 in the Code of Virginia. That spells out certain localities that under current law can prohibit a loaded gun with a magazine that holds, and at the time, not holds, but actually has, at the time of the offense of being caught, more than 20 rounds. So if you had an AR-15 with a 20-round magazine, that wouldn't be a problem. If it was a 21 round, yeah, but again, permit holders are exempt. That law has not been changed. That continues to be what it is today, as far as carry on public streets and all of that right now. Again, that would be open. Loaded guns could be under current law if you don't have a concealed handgun permit in certain localities like Richmond and Norfolk and Fairfax County. Those areas, it's enumerated in the law. If you look up 18.2-287.4, towards the bottom, it enumerates the localities that it applies in, which is, not very many considering how many localities we have in Virginia. And most of the state, especially the western part of the state, that none of that applies to you anyhow, whether you got a permit or not. So don't worry about that. Open carry is not going anywhere. Pat, you want to try again?
Sure.
Yeah, you're on. Yay.
Yeah. Okay. Tess had asked a question or made a point that you need to have a photo ID to get on that do not sell to yourself list. You do, but somebody else, say an estranged spouse, could potentially take your driver's license and make a photocopy of it and send the form in to the state police and put you on the list without your knowledge. So the new bill as revised does say that they have to send you notice, which is an improvement, but you're still on that list and it still takes 21 days for you to get off of that list, even if somebody else put you on without your permission. So there's no provision for instant removal if you were maliciously put on the list.
Yeah, that's a real flaw. First of all, we don't need any of that, but that at least they should have said, okay, if you were maliciously put on, we can put you on in 2 seconds. We can take you off in 2 seconds.
Right.
So again, they're not concerned about being fair or anything. It's all about the continued attack on gun owners.
Oh, no, it's not about safety at all. If it were about safety, then they would get help for people in the red flag laws. Instead of arresting the guns, they would get the person that is a supposed danger to themselves or others help.
Sure.
We've seen consistently throughout this General Assembly session where anytime they had an opportunity that would actually keep violent criminals in jail for longer, they killed all of those bills. But when they had opportunities to punish law-abiding people, like a $250 civil penalty if your guns are stolen and you don't report them right away, and then you get penalized again by the state because you didn't report them right away, say maybe you didn't know if somebody had borrowed them and maybe mentioned it to you in passing and you didn't think anything of it or something like that. So, or supposing you discover that your gun was stolen when they come to your house and knock on your door and say this gun was recovered in a crime, you go look for it and say, oh, darn, it's not in the safe where I thought it was. So at that point, they fine you $250 because they're accusing you of not reporting it right away. It's going to cost you more than that to fight the civil penalty. So,
right. You're guilty till proven innocent in that
right.
case. Yeah. But looking at how this is always the case. I was telling Margaret today, it just never ends. I was looking at Massachusetts. So the Massachusetts is looking at doing a sort of a bailout for businesses that are having a problem because of the virus going around and the coronavirus. And but there were some exceptions as to who they wouldn't, what businesses they wouldn't bail out, and one would be any kind of gun dealer. So Pat, if you were in Massachusetts, they would skip over you and bail out everybody else around you.
Yeah, well,
Never ends.
actually, the coronavirus might be helping out gun dealers, as you had mentioned. Provided we can get the guns and ammunition that people are buying, because the distributors are also, not only are they running low on supplies themselves, but their shipping staff is decreased. People are not coming to work. The salespeople, a lot of them work from home, but the shipping staff actually has to be there in the warehouse. And and then you have the delivery drivers, UPS and FedEx and that sort of thing. Robert Lee was asking, does a private weapon sale to a family member need a background check? Yes. If money or anything of value changes hands in exchange for the firearm. So if you say to your son, if you cut my grass for a month, I will give you this gun, the son has to go through the background check. It doesn't matter if it's a family member or not. If anything of value changes hands, then it is required to go through that background check.
Yeah, if it's a birthday present, then no, because it's just a gift. So you can give it to them, but don't expect anything in return, and you're good.
Yeah, I'm wondering how they're going to enforce that.
How are you going to enforce a lot of this stuff? A lot of this stuff is, it's something we've seen before where a lot of things are about symbolism, saying that you're virtuous, but not really being virtuous is for some people good enough. Saying, oh, we should give money to poor people. Well, you don't ever do it, but you're okay because you said we should. This is a similar thing. Oh, look what we've done. We've made it harder for gun owners to do stuff. Well, how are you going to enforce it? Well, that doesn't matter. That's not the point. we made it harder. So it's more of the insanity that we're all pretty sick and tired of.
Well, the next argument too is, well, I guess we need stricter laws since this isn't working.
Yeah, and what they do every time is they point at criminals and say, well, our crime rate, although forget that we're fourth from the bottom in violent crime in Virginia. We're one of the absolute safest states in the country. Forget that, but they're going to always point to crime and say, oh, look, we need more gun control. So because crime is still up. And the fact that they're taking guns away from people like you and me, Pat, and everybody listening to this, well, we don't commit crime. So, of course, crime is not going to go down. It's going to go up because more people are disarmed. But they keep coming back to that. And some people keep falling for it. Now, they keep thinking it really is about crime, and it's not about crime. It reminds me of Lucy pulling away the football every time Charlie Brown goes to kick it. And she swears she won't do it again, and he trusts her, and she pulls it away again, and it goes on and on and on. That's how we are with guns and the importance of gun control to lower crime. That,
and not only are they moving the football, but they're moving the goalposts at the same time.
Yeah, that's true.
Lynn Hess has asked, are the laws going to be challenged in court after they are signed, and are they going to have a stay? So there are some things that we will be asking for a stay or an injunction to keep them from going into effect, but it's up to the court whether or not they grant that. But yes, we are challenging a lot of these laws.
Yeah, the lawyers are they've already been working on it now for several weeks. So in anticipation of certain bills making it, they've started. Starting to get all their ducks in a row, doing all the preliminary legwork because we do want to get moving as fast as possible.
And it would be prudent to give a shout out to Gun Owners of America at this time too, because they've stepped in and are joining with us in these legal battles and sharing in the cost. It will be expensive to fight these bills, and how expensive depends on how far we have to go in the court system. So people that are asking how they can help right now, donations to VCDL are extremely important because these legal battles will cost money.
Yeah, it's like a vacuum cleaner on your pocketbook. But that's what we're about. We're not about making profits. We're about protecting rights, and we got to do that any way we can. So that's the bottom line on that. But another thing people, by the way, have been asking about is, can the governor do an emergency gun ban in Virginia? And the answer to that is no. Now, our court case about what he did when he did the emergency ban within Capitol Square is still very much alive. As Pat was saying, we're going to be pursuing some bills that are some court actions, and that court action is still very much alive. We really think that is something that we need to actually take to court and challenge. The only part we lost was the court refused to put a stay and allowed that gun ban to go forward during lobby day. They didn't rule that we were wrong and that he could even do it. They merely ruled that the lower court that they didn't think that there was enough there to do an emergency injunction, and the Supreme Court punted because they said, "Oh, the lower court didn't give us enough information to make a decision, so we're not going to make a decision." So they didn't disagree with our argument at all. They simply punted. I think everybody was trying to say, "Oh, but if something were to happen and I took up this, put in this injunction, would I then be blamed as the judge?" And I think that's all it was. Everybody chickened out. But that case is alive too. So we're going to be very busy in the courts.
So Philip, Rich Bonham is asking if there's a chance that the assault weapon and magazine ban can come back before the session ends.
Okay, in theory, the governor could resurrect something like that and put it back in front of the General Assembly. That's possible. It can't rule it out. Do I think that's likely? No. I think the General Assembly has already said we don't want this. And I think if the governor were to do that, it wouldn't make it. I mean, it's clear. So the question is hypothetical. Is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? No. But we'll be watching. So the governor really can't do much of anything during an emergency. Banning guns and all that, so you can pretty much relax on that. Right now, your localities can't either. Unfortunately, when this new law goes to letting localities have control, some of them could start to do stuff like that. Well, again, only within their buildings or within parks and so forth. They couldn't do a generic, you can't carry guns at all. By the way, that's what here we go again in Louisiana. Again, this stuff never ends. In Louisiana, the mayor of New Orleans has said that she's putting an edict up that says you can't transport or carry firearms and so forth during the state of emergency. So here we go again. So it'll probably be another lawsuit coming her way from probably the Second Amendment Foundation, like they did after Katrina. But here we go again. This is the kind of baloney that's just totally unacceptable. There was a joke somewhere that a bank is somewhere that loans you an umbrella when it's sunny out and takes it back when it starts to rain. And that's kind of what the government is doing in Louisiana. You can have a gun until you really need one in an emergency, and then we're not going to let you have it. It's asinine, and that's what we're facing over and over again. Just it never seems to end. Like I said, the Massachusetts store bailout. Of course, like Pat said, the gun dealers are probably going to be in fairly good shape. By the way, this is not Virginia news so much, but it's a neighboring state that I'll point out that apparently the one and only FFL in Washington, D.C., the one and only one where people living in Washington can go to get a gun, is he's stepping away for a few months, and it may be permanently. I think it's a health issue. So there won't be an FFL. In fact, I think effective tonight, there is no FFL in DC. So anybody up there that feels like it's time to finally buy a gun, they're going to be on hold. And this, again, puts us in a mode where they need to change the law. People in Washington, D.C. should be allowed to go to surrounding states, Maryland, West Virginia, or maybe, I think, those are probably the main states that surround them. They should be able to go to any of those and buy a gun, because the background checks are all nationwide now. It's the same background check that'd be run by the FFL in D.C. is run by an FFL in Virginia or Maryland. So, and it's sad. Anyhow, doesn't really affect us. We got that information today. I forwarded it on to Gun Owners of America because they're a national organization, and I thought it might make more sense for them to get involved in this and see if they can help. But they need to change this. They need to allow people to leave the district and go to surrounding states and do the background check. We'll see what happens with that. It just goes to show you that this stuff never ends. Do we, Pat or Ed, do we have any more questions or anything you want me to answer?
Yeah, I would point out that with the NICS system now, there's really no reason to prohibit transactions between the states. In other words, there's no reason for somebody that's a Virginia resident. They should be allowed to go over to West Virginia and buy a handgun. They can buy a long gun already, as long as it's legal in both states in a face-to-face transaction with a dealer. But there's no reason for the prohibition on the handgun sales. There were some questions. Well, there was one comment about somebody said they got their membership packet in the mail and they're now official. When you go on PayPal and join, you are officially a member as of that moment, and you can print out your PayPal receipt and use it to show that you have joined or renewed for people that require proof for, say, a discount. For instance, US Law Shield is not only offering donation to VCDL for members of VCDL, well, for anybody that joins up using a special promo code, but they're giving VCDL members a 15% discount in addition to donating to VCDL, but they are requiring proof of membership. So just save that PayPal email that you get, and it says right on there that you paid your membership to VCDL, and you can use that as proof that you have joined until you get your member packet. Right now, Sandy is working on mid-December, so she's wading through about 15,000 membership applications, which is awesome, but it's also a little inconvenient for people like you guys that have joined and are waiting to get your stuff in the mail, and we apologize for that. But we really don't want to bring in temporary help because we guard your data like a mother bear guards her cubs. And Sandy's been doing an excellent job, and she's doing the best that she can, but it's going to take her a little while to wade through all this. And we really do appreciate your support and patience.
Do you know if that printing off the receipt that way works for CMP, or is she going to have to send them a card for CMP?
I do not know about CMP, but if you are wanting to make a CMP purchase, you can contact membership@vcdl.org, and Sandy will expedite your membership so that you can get that purchase completed.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's good that you put that out there. So, yeah, we are way behind. VA alert now is at 44,860 something people. So we're just coming up on 45,000 on VA alert, up from 29 in November. So that's a big jump. And these are very active people that are getting on. which is exactly what we need. And we're going to need to keep people motivated. You've got to keep yourself motivated and everybody else. This is a long-term battle. We cannot, if we go to sleep, then this stuff is going to stand. So we can't do that. But boy, did it work. When we got together and everybody did lobby day and all this sanctuary stuff, it worked wonders. It absolutely did. Yeah, a bunch of gun bills went through, but all of them were either many were killed. And again, when I do that final write-up, I'll be going over all of those too, to remind everybody how many bills never saw the light of day that would have been really bad. So this is all paying off. We just have to be patient. We couldn't fix everything, unfortunately, because people didn't vote. That put us in a very bad position. We truly have done, I think, an amazing job in mitigating the damage that could have been done.
Hey, Philip. So Dave Sexton at the bottom of the screen there, you see his comment. He wanted to know if VCDL had any comments about the young man killed by SWAT in Maryland while he was asleep, apparently.
We've seen kind of conflicting information on that. I mean, some of it says that he wasn't allowed to own a gun, and then other things implied that this was a sort of a red flag thing. It's just one of these things we're looking at going, I'm not completely sure I know what happened yet before I could comment. I really need to know for sure if this was purely a red flag being issued or if this was something else. It's certainly concerning when that happens. But if it was a legitimate raid on a house, that there was some legitimate reason for them to raid it for some high danger purpose, then that might be different. But just don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to say when you don't have all the facts.
Yeah, we try to be careful because you can get burned by rushing to judgment. One way or the other. So that's why sometimes when things happen, we're not always the first one out the door with a comment on it, just like in this case. I would rather hold back a little bit and not be one of the first out while I'm evaluating and the organization's looking at everything so that we know the facts before we go off with them. If we can be out quick with it, we will, but sometimes you just have to wait. I've just seen so many of these incidents where time after time, the way it was initially reported changes dramatically. A week or two later, suddenly it's a whole different scenario. So I've learned to be patient with some of that stuff. The press get it wrong, they can rush to judgment sometimes.
Especially when you have such wildly conflicting reports from either side. If they're fairly similar, that's one thing. But when you have two totally opposite stories, it's hard to say. And there's probably truth in both of them, but until we have actual facts, you can't issue a quantified statement. James Davis is asking if there's any progress on lifetime memberships in VCDL. James, that will take a bylaw change. Our bylaws specifically state that membership is for 1 year, and we are looking into making some bylaws changes, but that's a process that takes time. So it is not out of the question, but it's not in the near future.
And we have some another lower. I can't remember if we put this in alert yet, Pat. Did we do the lobby day lower in an alert yet?
We have not. We didn't get the final images of that. So, but PSA is working on
Palmetto State Armory.
Yeah, Palmetto State Armory is working on another special lower in honor of Lobby Day. So stay tuned, watch your VA alerts, and keep an eye out on what's coming on. Ed Levine can probably fill us in a little bit on that because he's been working really closely with Palmetto.
Not that one specifically, because that one's coming and we're going to announce that, and that one's going to get VCDL $10. But the very day after Biden said something about an AR-14, Palmetto came out with an AR-14 with the serial number that begins Angry Joe. So those are already on their site in pre-order.
Oh yeah, the gift that keeps giving, Joe.
Robert Lewis is asking approximately how many members. It is an extreme approximation because of the backlog in membership, but I would say probably pushing the 30,000 mark. Would you say that's pretty close, Philip?
At least 25,000, and we may be pushing more, but I would say at least 25 at this point.
Right. And this really does help. When we talk to the General Assembly, it really did help to be able to go and say that our membership has doubled since the election. And moving forward, because we're going to go through all of this again next year, we have the same General Assembly next year. So the numbers, if we go back to the General Assembly in January and say our numbers, our membership has quadrupled or more, then that is really going to carry some weight. They shoved a lot of this stuff through, but next year is an election year, and they do want to keep their seats. So they are paying attention to how many people are joining VCDL. They did pay attention to how many people showed up for Lobby Day. And we hope we can have as big a Lobby Day next year and get some of this stuff repealed that if we can't overturn it in the court systems in the meantime.
Yeah, in 2021, we'll have we'll vote in a new General Assembly and a new governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general. So there is chance for some big changes in Virginia. The Senate will remain the same for 2 more years. However, as you've seen, the Senate is more willing to work on stuff. Right now, the House is just, they're basically in I hate gun owners mode. And the House is and the Senate isn't. So in 2 years, we could begin doing some really good stuff here. At least we'd have a firewall against any more bad stuff. Those elections in 2021 are critical. And I'll tell you what, the elections this year are going to be very important. While it won't affect us directly in Virginia, well, it is a presidential election and there is a senator involved. It will also say if we have a really strong turnout, it'll send a message to the General Assembly as well. Give them a heads up on what 2021 is going to look like if the state of Virginia rethinks some of the previous election it had on president and senator and so forth. So, boy, I tell you what, voting has never been more important, and it's gotten easier to do. The Democrats have opened the floodgates. It's like, you want to vote absentee. You used to have a whole bunch of reasons. I think now that's all gone, or the bar has been lowered so low that you can start voting early and don't have to worry about it come the date in November.
Voting is really important, but it's just one part of the equation. So the Republicans are having a convention. You can sign up to be a delegate and help to get good people in positions where they're running. You can work for the campaigns of candidates that support your rights. You can talk to your friends and your neighbors about the election process. Get people registered to vote that are sympathetic or supportive of our Second Amendment rights. Go out and work the polls. I know in my district, I see the same people there every single year working the polls, but it's just a handful of people. And there are some elections that I don't see anybody out there. You walk up to the voting place and there's just nobody there, especially in primaries. And primaries are where we can have a huge impact because the turnout is low, so it takes fewer people to swing the balance. So all of this stuff is really, really important. And I keep saying this over and over again, and I can't say it enough. Freedom is not a concept, it's an action. It's a way of life. And if you want to maintain your freedom, you have to work at it, just like you work at a marriage. You know, it's something that you have to make a commitment to.
Yeah, you have to get out. And again, we keep emphasizing this because we cannot drop the ball again. I'm getting less and less patient with people who say, "Oh, there's no point in voting." I'm really getting impatient with that. To me, that's just a lazy cop out. Oh, I'm not going to bother spending a few minutes voting because it's it's too much trouble. So it's not worth it. No, it's worth it. That's a cop out. To say you're not going to vote. Now, I will say that, and again, I wish I had a nickel for everybody else that's repeated this. The Republican Party dropped the ball big time this last election. There should never have been 30 Democrats running unopposed. That should never happen. I don't care if they have to put a monkey in a suit and give him a zero balance, but get him on the ticket. They need to have somebody so that people, when they go to the polls, feel like they've got a choice. They don't have to check the box of somebody they know is no good. They have an option. So be whatever party it is, there needs to at least be somebody else to vote for, be it a libertarian. I don't care what it is. It shouldn't just be one person on the ballot. Certainly the Democrats didn't do that with the Republicans, except in one case, every Republican had a challenger. So how come it wasn't the other way around? I think that was a severe mistake. And that's the kind of thing that frustrates voters when you're going to the polls. You're going, well, I've only got one person to vote for, and I don't want to vote for them. Of course, you can write in a name. And another option is maybe people can agree on a name and write it in. And I'll tell you what, Nick Freitas won a write-in contest.
Wouldn't that have been funny if you had won several jurisdictions writing your name in?
Oh boy! I guess I could vote in one seat and then run over to the other one and sit down and vote in that seat.
I just had that mental image. Sheila Benson is asking if we're going to have another rally before July 1st. We have been kicking that idea around. It takes a lot of work, Sheila, and if you want to volunteer to help organize something like that, you can send us an email to leadership@vcdl.org, and we can see what we can get accomplished. Right now, Philip and I and the rest of the board are focused on what's going on with the lawsuits and with the winding down of the General Assembly. As you've seen, they can sneak bills back in that we thought were dead, so we can't let our guard down just yet. But we do have some executive members that are looking into possible venues and the potential for having something maybe on that last Saturday before the end of June.
Well, let me also say we may well also be doing things around the state again. There's several things that I'm going to bring. One thing I'm going to activate that I discussed back in I think it was November. It might have even been before. It might have been in September. I brought out the concept that we need people in every single jurisdiction, somebody that can interact with friendlies in government, again, board of supervisors, the city council. We need somebody to monitor everything going on, looking for anything dealing with guns in the localities. So in Fairfax, we need to have somebody constantly with their eyes peeled every time Fairfax publishes an agenda for the board of supervisors, anything like that. We need somebody on top of that, if they see a gun thing, to get in touch with us, because we're going to be activating our membership anytime a locality tries to pass gun control or tries to pull a fast one. So I brought up the concept. Some people volunteered, and I hadn't called for volunteers yet, but they were that anxious to do this. But I will actually be calling for volunteers. That way we'll have basically the whole state covered, and we'll know if a board of supervisor member sneezes somewhere and he says gun control while he's sneezing, we'll know about it within a few minutes. So that's going to be important, especially now that localities have the option of passing gun control. The other thing is, I have John, I've talked to John, he's going to be John Pierce, he'll be drafting a resolution for us that we will be getting. We're going to kind of do a repeat of the sanctuaries, where we're going to have people turning out, hopefully in big numbers, just like we did for sanctuaries, and have them pass a resolution or an ordinance that says they will not be doing any gun control, even though now they have the power to do it, or they will in July, they won't be doing any. So we won't have in these localities any gun control in their buildings, in their parks, none of that stuff. That's going to be a big effort, and that's going to be an important effort unless you want local gun control. If you don't, then we need to get just as active as we were when they were going to take away everybody's AR-15. We need to do the same thing, because if we don't, we're going to be seeing local gun control. Well, we have the option of heading it off. So those are two things that will be starting up. So whether we do a statewide rally or not, I don't know. But we're probably going to be doing a series of mini rallies across the state, at least at these Board of Supervisors, City Council, and Town Council meetings.
So Melissa was asking if we have an official head count for Lobby Day. We don't, because of the way that we were forced out into the streets like that. I can tell you it was substantially more than the official 22,000 that the state estimated. My educated guess was in excess of 50,000. And there's a lot of people that concur with that. But as far as an official accurate estimate, no, we do not have one.
Yeah, we had 60,000 that said they were there on Facebook or something that were there attending that day. But you don't know for sure if they are actually there in person or whatever. So right. You can't count that. But that's another trend towards it was 50,000 or so. We did have a member that did this kind of stuff, and he looked at some aerial views that he had, and they measure how wide the street is. They measure. They look at the crowd, and if it's shoulder to shoulder, they know how many persons per square foot there are, and so forth. And their estimate was coming up closer to 80,000. But we just don't know to answer. But everybody that was there, everybody has laughed at the 22,000. Keep in mind, the Capitol Police work for the General Assembly, and so the General Assembly leadership might have said, "Let's not make that number too big. We don't want to make it seem like it was what it was." So I don't. The 22,000 is just not believable. I'm sorry. It's a big number. I mean, it's nothing to sneeze at. 22,000 is a lot of people, but it is not reflective. I would say it's probably half of what was there.
Philip, John is asking why not have a VCDL militia for the state?
Well, historically, we're not a militia. We never have been. That was never part of our charter, our agenda. The reason for forming wasn't to be a militia. You wouldn't know it by the little wrong hand logo on the shirt here. But it hasn't been. However, that's not to say that we're not looking at maybe facilitating some of that stuff. It's really outside of our expertise. It's outside of our charter, if you will, of what we planned on doing. But I went to a militia muster in Franklin County. I dragged Dennis O'Connor with me because he was in the military. I wanted to get his impression, because a militia, the people running it need to be completely familiar with the military, because militaries have evolved over centuries, and they do things a certain way because that's what works for a military. And as far as the organization, the whole bit. And so there is a movement to do like a county level, somehow tied into maybe Board of Supervisors across the state. So we're looking at that, whether maybe we could help in some way facilitate that without actually being the driving force behind it. I just think it's outside of I guess the short answer is it's outside of our bailiwick, but we're not washing our hands of the concept. So there may be a happy medium where we help facilitate some of this stuff without actually being the one in charge of it.
That being said, a lot can be said for just getting to know your neighbors and what their skill sets are. Who is good at what, who has what, and so on and so forth. I've lived in both urban, suburban, and country settings, and I can say that where I live now out in the sticks, we have a network, if you will. If somebody gets sick, the neighbors, of course, take food over and cut grass for people and things like that. But I used to joke that I could build an entire house just from the associations that I have in the community, because there was a lot of people with various skills, various resources in the neighborhood. And when times get tough, we all work together. The ice storms that we had several years ago, we cut ourselves out. We didn't wait for VDOT to come do it. The squall lines that went through after that knocked a lot of trees down and knocked power out for half the state. Hurricane Fran, we were out of power for 4 days, but the people got out their chainsaws, cleared the roads. We didn't wait for the county or the state to come in and do it. Snowstorms, we plow each other's driveways. People with tractors go around and help people that don't have tractors. So get to know your neighbors is my point, and build that cooperative relationship. And that goes a long way. You don't necessarily have to have a militia muster to work together to prevent catastrophes when you have disasters. Disasters are not necessarily catastrophes. Catastrophes happen when you're not prepared for disasters.
Yeah, the one of the things that Dennis noticed in the militia muster that we witnessed was that what they need to do, and he created a list. I'll need to distribute. They'll be part of, if we get involved in this, we'll be distributing the list. But in a nutshell, you need to know what everybody that's at the muster, what their background is. You're going to have people that are plumbers. You're going to have people that are electricians. You're going to have people that know how to prepare a large amount of food for people. We're going to have doctors and nurses. You're going to have computer experts, ham radio operators. You need to know what your assets are in a militia. If you've got a natural disaster happens, the county calls up the militia to go help. Well, again, you need to know how to assign people. Hey, Joe, you're a ham radio operator. You and Mike are going to set up communications for us because all the cell phones are down in the area. Things like that. So it's something that, but again, our whole country has kind of gotten to the point where, the social media thing has gotten to the point where people don't much know their neighbors anymore. It's all of our socializing is done over the computer anymore. And Pat's completely right. You need to go meet your neighbors, get to know them, and understand that in an emergency, you're going to depend on each other. And it'd be great ahead of time to do that and maybe to understand what your neighbors do. What is their specialty? Because if you had to protect your neighborhood, it might be nice to know what assets you had, who you could call upon to do one thing or another. I'm not a mechanic, so you wouldn't call on me for mechanics. That would be a waste of time. However, I know a lot about computers. I know a lot about radio transmissions. I'm a ham radio operator. So it's important anyhow. And then, of course, a lot of people are going to want to know who is it that's armed and able to protect the community. And hopefully, again, it's better if as many people as possible are trained to arms. It's a plus.
Well, the other thing you need to know is who in your neighborhood is vulnerable for. So if you have elderly neighbors or people with medical conditions, those may be the first ones that you check on in a situation where, say, the power goes out or that sort of thing. And, it really is when communities work together, everybody benefits. So that was my entire point, was to get to know who's in your community, what their skill set is, who has what strong points and what weak points, work together to stay safe, secure, and functioning.
Yeah, we generally don't depend on each other all that much, but an emergency changes everything. It absolutely changes everything. So the people that are going to do the best are the ones that are prepared for that, anticipate it, and like we're saying, get to know your neighbors, get to know what's going on. Make sure you've got your own supplies. Make sure you've got plenty of water and stuff. I'll have to admit, I haven't been keeping up my stocks of food and stuff as much since we had our new president. In the Obama days, I was definitely much more in tune to stocking stuff. So I haven't been as much. But you really shouldn't let your guard down, because you just never know. It just anything can happen at any time. And this virus thing, look at how the world is changing. What, a few weeks it's changed completely. It's like a ghost town out there.
Yeah, I had to laugh because one of my friends had posted on Facebook that people were laughing at preppers when they were stockpiling stuff, and now you've got everybody running to the store and buying toilet paper and things like that. And I said, city folks call them preppers, country folk call them normal. We can food when the gardens come in. We can it to have it year round, and we stockpile things. We draw water and save it, because if the power goes out, the well pump doesn't work, and you don't have water without having put some away in jars ahead of time. And if you can't get out of the neighborhood because there's trees in the road, and you're out of toilet paper, you could be in a world of hurt. So
I'm waiting to talk to some of these people that are hoarding the toilet paper and say, what was that you told me about, buying extra ammunition and guns? People don't need all that.
Right.
If you're out hoarding, it's different when it's you, what you want to hoard. It's gotten crazy out there. But again, people that know more about this than me, like Dennis O'Connor, emphasizes, the flu still kills more people than this thing's killing. And we don't quite go to this extent with it. And of course, there was the odd case of the 1918 flu. We took out younger people. The older and the really young survived fine, but it was the people in their 30s and 40s that were getting killed. Very, very strange how this stuff can work. But, right now, I guess what they're trying to do with this, and I completely understand, is they don't want a big spike of everybody getting sick all at once in the hospital system collapsing. They want to spread it out. Basically, it seems like you're almost doomed to get this at some point in your life. But it'll be treatable, and they'll have plenty of facilities to do it if they spread it out. So it's odd. We're just going to have to ride it out. So I hope everybody washed their keyboard, so I'm not giving you coronavirus. Do we have any other questions, Pat? Are we?
I'm not seeing any popping up here, Ed. Have you seen anything?
No, we're pretty good.
Okay. All right. So I guess we'll schedule another meeting maybe next week sometime, maybe Friday. We'll see what's happening. By the depending on what's going on, we could postpone. The 11th is going to be a key date. By then, maybe before then, we'll know the status of all the gun bills. That's when things are going to escalate. Starting in that time period, I'm going to be getting prepared, like I say, to start this wave of things across the state again, all the localities. So we'll have that coming up. We'll have the lawsuits. We're going to have a massive alert. I say massive. It's going to cover all the gun bills and all that. So we're going to be very, very busy. So we'll just kind of play it by ear. But we'll let you know before we do another one of these.
I just want to remind folks that if you came in late on the broadcast, or you got distracted and couldn't do it, you can always go to our YouTube channel after the live broadcast, and we trim it down so it's just you don't have to watch 10 minutes of the meeting will be starting soon, and you don't really have to watch us to see our faces. You can listen to this broadcast if you're still going to and from work and just get the information so that you can hear what's going on. And sometimes you get more out of it by listening to it than trying to figure it all out in the alert. So I just want to let you know it does get archived on the YouTube channel.
Okay. Well, if nobody else has any other questions, we'll go ahead and call the meeting. Thank everybody for coming out. Pat, appreciate it. Ed, thank you very much as usual.
Yes, sir.
Putting this together.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.